Welcome to the Incredible Machines podcast, where we chat with incredible people doing incredible things. Today we have a doozy, Oscar Chalupsky. Few athletes hold a record comparable to that of Oscar Chalupsky. He's made history since the age of 15 in the South African National Life-Saving Championships. He was an athlete and a country spokesman in the 1992 Barcelona Olympics and is a multiple-time global surf ski champion, having won the internationally famous Molokai to Oahu World Surf Ski Marathon Championships in Hawaii a record 12 times, his most recent victory being at the age of 49. Then, in 2019, he was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, an incurable bone marrow cancer, and told he had 6 months to live. But as with everything else Oscar does, he is determined to emerge victorious. In this episode, we learn the power of positivity, how to embrace lifelong learning, and why setting high goals matter, and much, much more. But importantly, we ask the question of, how do you do it, Oscar? So without further ado, the incredible Oscar Chalupsky.
Yeah, I mean, that's a $1 million question everybody likes to hear, and obviously I get that every single day, is how do you do it? And you got to think differently. I mean, life's about not only just thinking about what the doctors say, you've got to actually research it, because some doctors, in fact, all doctors, when they get their degree, they hardly do anything on nutrition, and I believe nutrition is very important in exercise. They don't really specifically go into that at all, so you've got to do it yourself. So, and my famous saying is that we're all getting older, but the joke of it is we can all get cleverer if we just keep on studying and learning, and that's what I did. And I mean, the last 2 years, October 2023, I was given 1 or 2 days, told the family, had the priest in to give the last rites, and there's no way I was going to give up. And then I fasted for 21 days. Now, no doctor's going to tell you to fast for 21 days because no medicines, no medical companies make money, no food companies make money, and even the people that sell toilet paper are going to go bust if you keep on fasting for 21 days. So you understand. So that's something completely different. And then there's a lot of alternative medicines that are so cheap out there that I use as well. And when I was given no chance to live, that was in October 2024, which is a few months ago, same thing again. I just willed myself to get through it, and I didn't believe what the doctor said, because I was watching my Garmin watch and saying, no, my training readiness says I'm 100%, so how can you say I'm going to die tomorrow? I said, I'm not going to die tomorrow. And that's, you see, your mental attitude is important. That's why I always say to people, live every day, because you never know when you use what you've learned in the past for the future.
Yeah, no, I love that. There's a couple things that I hear you saying. There's definitely an openness so these are entrepreneurial traits. So we're very big on entrepreneurs here. So openness, disagreeability. So that's a huge thing in entrepreneurs. They disagree a lot, and that's why they don't necessarily do that well in big corporates, and they often leave. Or the other thing, and it's going to take us back to the beginning of the story, is it's quite interesting how many really successful entrepreneurs, maybe athletes is another thing we need to talk about, but how many of them have immigrants as fathers? So your father came from Germany, and he brought his love of kayaking to South Africa, and that's kind of where the book starts. Yeah. So just to quote, before I get to that, just a quote, I saw this on The Good Things Guy. They also wrote a beautiful piece on you, and it says, Oscar's memoir highlights his time as a lifesaver, an Ironman, and as Olympian, and quite frankly, an inspiration. So you are the very definition of an incredible machine. I think it's an honor to have you here. I'm joined by Luke Holden, my business partner and creative director. I'm John Oliff, serial entrepreneur and podcast host at the moment. But yeah, the father brought his family's love of kayaking from Germany. Tell us how it all started.
Yeah, so he came out of the war. I mean, he was a war baby, so he's now 87 years old. So he came out, and he basically was the father of modern canoeing in South Africa, and the whole thing, the doozies and all that. And he showed the people, hey, you're paddling wrong, you're doing this wrong. And he started canoeing. So it was interesting, and this is very important for those parents out there. He never pushed me at all, ever. What he did was say, no. You want to paddle, you want to swim, you want to do anything. So I was playing cricket, tennis, no paddling, until he one day said, oh, do you want to paddle? I said, okay, I'll go and paddle. So he never forced us to paddle. And at age 13 or 12 or 13, I only started paddling, where people are starting at a much younger age. So I did all the other sports, the school sports that got you fame and fortune at school, but I didn't do paddling at all. And then he just said, okay, let's paddle. And obviously, when you do anything, his German saying was, if you're going to do it properly, or don't even do it at all, So that's from his German heritage, precision. You would say, okay, we're going to go swimming. The car leaves at 5:45, yeah. Now those days, to go to Westville school and Westville swimming pool, and he would leave at 5:45. If you're there or not, didn't wait. Off he went, and you learnt punctuality right from a small age, and then when you win, then you learn that winning is a lot better, and it just takes a little bit more time and effort to do all the training.
Yeah, sounds like you got some discipline implemented there. So talking about you glazed over there quickly on the school sports, but you actually had SA colours for rugby and water polo.
Yeah, I got Natal Schools rugby and then SA Schools water polo. Okay. Yeah, so that's what happened. And then again, I got that at a very young age. So when I got to school, I was much bigger than most people. So rugby, the reason why I actually even got into rugby is that the school, everything was rugby mad, like South Africa's rugby mad. And I eventually said, okay, well, let me go and play this sport. So it didn't take me to understand that I was training 3 times a day. Rugby players at the time were training 3 times a week. So it wasn't very difficult for me to eventually play for the first team at Westville Boys High and then make Natal Schools. And then Craven Week happened to be in Stellenbosch, where I met the famous Dani Craven. So it was fairly easy for me, that sport. And then I actually gave it up. I did Natal under 20 and then stopped because there was no money in this sport at all. So it was just a love of the sport, and it frustrated me at school that I was winning already at 14. I was a junior and senior Ironman. You didn't get any acknowledgement for that, but you got acknowledgement for making the rugby team, and I was one of two of us. Yeah.
As I understand it from the book, it was a bet against some mates.
Yeah, no, that's exactly. I was sitting in the tuck shop like you do, and eating donuts and saying, and I set high goals. I didn't say first team rugby. I said I'm going to play for Natal Schools. At the time, nobody had played for Natal Schools in Westville, so I set my goal there. And like anything in life, you need a plan, and I did the training, and suddenly I was at the trials, and then obviously making the team. So that's what it takes in life, And again, I was forced into that direction purely because my ego said, how can I be this best person in the world in paddling and water polo and swimming and everything, but getting no recognition from school? I'm going to go and take up rugby. I mean, obviously I was a natural ball sports player, and again, I'm very much a team member, and I love team sports. So I did rugby till it became didn't fit in with my paddling and all my other sports.
I think you opened a game for the Barbarians, the Springboks, or what was that?
Exactly, yeah. So we played. It was actually the Natal were playing the Lions. Natal were playing the Lions, and we were the curtain raiser. So that was fantastic to meet all those guys, and some of those guys I met and kept in contact. Mark Lone was in the team for Natal, so I've kept in contact with all those people, and that's been also my life, is when I meet people, I take their numbers and I make sure that we become friends, because we got like-minded people, so it's interesting, and that's what life also takes. So from a young age, I was already thinking, hey, this is a nice person, I'd like to get to know him, I'd like to meet him again, and I'd take them out paddling and get them involved in my sport, and I think that's what you've got to do. If you want to grow a sport and grow in life, you've got to have the support and the network, which I built up. In fact, in my phone here, I've probably got 8,500 contacts.
Yeah, networking's big, I think, for you, and it's authentic. I think that's what I take out of the way you approach it. It's very authentic.
The people that I want to stay in friends, I'll take their number. If I don't take your number, I don't think you're very nice.
Cool. I want to ask about the nickname Fiberglass. Can you take us through that?
Well, I mean, when we were young, all the boats were handmade. So in my garage in Warspite Road and off University, Connie-Kramer turnoff, just after 45th cutting, was our house. And underneath was just basically a workshop that made canoes and surf skis. So from a young age, from 2 years old, I was always there wanted to be in the action at 2 years old, and there's fiberglass everywhere to make a kayak, to do the doozy in those days, or the Umkomaas River Marathon with my father. There was lots of fiberglass, so that's why I always probably had fiberglass stuck in my hair, stuck everywhere. It makes you itchy as hell as well. So I was called fiberglass for a long time because I was always in the fiberglass.
And it's interesting, you have some more in common. It's the more you read your book and you read that intro, and it is just so incredible what you've done, but there's definitely you can find connection with your story in so many ways. And just in this seat, we've had SA champs already in bodyboarding specifically. I mean, I hold that as well. But
fantastic.
But Mark McCarthy in one of our first episodes was the SA champ. You came into that sport and then won a trip to Hawaii. I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Yeah,
quickly.
so that was a fun trip because being a beach man, I mean, I spent 5-6 hours a day. I used to get to the beach by 6 a.m. and then leave at 6 p.m. and cycle home to Westville, which was about 25 k's. And I spent all my time on the beach, either as a lifeguard or training, ski board, and then boogie board was, those were days we called them boogie board, was
boogie boards.
Sort of my relaxing time, you know, and I was pretty good at it. But I never knew how good I was. And I was actually on life-saving duty for Durban Surf, and there was a Natal Champs happening at the same time. I said, hey, I'm going to get my boogie board, which I got in California in 1979 from Moray Boogie when I went to my first national team. Got it, got my flippers, did my things, and made the team of 4 people. Mark Van Haysten, I think, was in that team. And the 4 people, they said, okay, now we're going to go to East London for the SA Champs. I said, okay, I'll drive. So I'll drive. This is 1983. I drove to East London, and thank goodness I went to Pollock Sports in East London, and they showed some videos of people doing boogie boarding, and I hadn't watched it, you know. I just took notes. I just loved it, and I was obviously fearless. And I saw some guys doing barrel rolls and all these tricks on this video just before the SA Champs the next morning. The next morning there were some waves, and I did all those things that I learned the night before on the video. So that's how I won. I won by a country mile. It was number 1, that was big, and number 2, I was doing barrel rolls, and I was doing all those things that nobody even seen, but I saw it in the video. That's how you do it, and I was fearless. So that's how I won, and I went straight back to Hawaii, which I just finished because I won the Molokai for the first time in 1983, and then in December I came back to do the World Bodyboard Champs, and it was a pity because I know if the surf was big and a bit more gnarly and a bit more technical, I would have done it right. But I came like 12th, and we actually surfed to Oliff as opposed to pipeline or backdoor pipeline or gas chambers. So Oliff was pretty much like a mushy east wave, very small, and the small guys obviously featured. But I surfed Waimea Bay on my boogie board, which was fun. I mean, that is seriously big. It has to be big to surf. And then see, not many other people would go out, but being fearless, I really enjoyed it. So I was in Hawaii in October, and I was back there in December, January, and then that's where Sean Thompson was like giving me advice which waves to catch and things like that. So it's all a small world in South African surfing.
Even that mention of Mark Van Hastings, as you remember that name, he's done, I think, every SA Champs there's been since
1983. I think that was the first one, 1983.
He's done every single one. Just to transition quickly, because you've brought it up now in Hawaii. I want to get, and we'll talk about later on the Texan and that sort of stuff. But the Molokai, can you explain that race to us, and why is it so good? It's the World Championship.
Well, it actually there's a bit of a history behind that. So when I won the junior and senior Ironman, it's like our sport is Mickey Mouse compared to soccer and rugby, and then obviously I was in the newspaper, first person to win junior and senior Ironman in life-saving history. And then 1 month later on SABC TV in April, there came a guy, Grant Kenny, who's just won the junior and senior Ironman from Australia. And it's a strange thing how your mind works. And I was sitting and I couldn't believe it. I wasn't on TV, but he was on TV. And I just sort of hated this guy. Why the hell did he go in South African TV? And that's made me want to race against this guy, Grant Kenny. But because of apartheid, I couldn't race. So there was nothing I could do. And then eventually in 1983, in April, they said, no, there's an Ironman race in Hawaii. That was a beautiful place to go. And Grant Kenny's going to be in this Ironman. So I arrived there in April with, actually Herman was there, and my father, and Graham Hill, a famous guy, and Hugh Ross. And we get there, and there's no Grant Kenny. But while I was there, I hear about this race from Molokai, which is a leper colony, to Oahu, which is where Waikiki and Honolulu is. And it's 52 kilometers across the Kaiwi Channel, which is the roughest channel in the world, they say. And there was a race that Grant Kenny had won 4 years in a row, and the race was going to be in October. And this is what happens in life. You have to make decisions. I was doing a BCom to become a CA, and I was on a rugby bursary. So you just got to say, okay, what do I do? Do I follow the money and come back and become an accountant, or do I follow my passion of paddling? And I followed my passion of paddling. I said, I'm staying. So I had to stay from April because I don't have the funds to fly back and fly back again. So stayed with a guy called Bob Toogood. I stayed on the floor, and then I saw lots of videos of this guy, Grant Kenny. And let me tell you, Grant Kenny was very wealthy at the time. He already had his own airline. And he was flying airplanes. He loves flying, and he still flies. And I knew October was going to happen. I flew my boat over from South Africa that I designed in 1976 from the fiberglass. And got there, and I still didn't meet him. I hated him, and he didn't even know who I was. But we get to the start of the race, and this is in October 1983, and everybody has to have an escort boat, so that's important, because if you fall off, you're dead, so everybody has an escort boat. And in life, he had won it 4 years in a row, so I had to say, listen, I better watch this guy till I could see a wahoo in front. And once I saw a wahoo in front, I took off. And in this sport, because of the big waves going pounding like this, you can't actually tell whether you're in front or behind. You just hope you get to the beach in Oahu, Honolulu, that you aren't. There's not another surf ski there. That's how you know. So got there was no other surf ski. I managed to beat him for the first time by about 12 minutes, and then broke the record by 15 minutes, which he also broke his own record. So, as I say, what happens when you come second, you have to have a lot of excuses. And, of course, he had a lot of excuses, but he's actually turned out to be a good mate. So that race became like the world champion. All the best people used to go there. So for 7 years in a row, I won. Grant Kenny came second, or another Australian, and eventually one Hawaiian came second once. And then they banned me in 1990. They said, no, you can't race again. So I'd won 7 years in a row, and I was at my peak, and they banned me. So that's another story in itself, And then you have to make decisions, like everybody else listening to this podcast. You have to make decisions, and you can't cry about it, And a lot of people do cry about things and say they've hard done by, and things like that. I just said, okay, well, I'm going to take up another sport. Let me take up golf.
Yeah, and then we jumping a bit ahead there, but let's go to that. That golf. So you took up golf, as I understand it, because it was the only professional sport that South Africans are allowed to play, and there was money in it, and it was a sport. And you, there's what they're called the Monday group, or the Tuesday group.
Tuesday school, yeah. So which is still going. Today is Tuesday, funny enough, and I would have been playing the Tuesday school today, but I'm playing in the SA Open Pro-Am, Johnson SA Open Pro-Am. So it was interesting. So I went there and I said, okay, I want to go from whatever handicap to 30. I don't know. I'd never played this game, to scratch. I said, okay, let me see if I can become a pro in 1 year. I only had 1 year. And again, and you have to make sacrifices. I used to get there at about 4 o'clock in the morning and used to hit balls under floodlights, just chipping and putting, because that's where the floodlight was. And then when it got light, then I started hitting longer balls, and then I have to go into work, So I wasn't a full-time professional like any else's of this world. So, and to cut a long story short, I practiced like crazy, and on the weekends, 18 hours a day, no problem. And then in December, I played with Graham Beck, the guy who owned a huge coal mines around South Africa, and Graham Beck won. And David Bromwitz and another guy who wrote books, and he said, Oscar, I saw you play today in Royal Cape, but if you can play at Clovelly and break par, I'll pay for you, your wife, and your son, it was 2 at the time, to go to David Ledbetter, who's the best golfing coach in the world, for a whole year. And as it turns out, and this happens in life, 3 days before I was due to play, his mother died and all bets were off, so I didn't become a professional golfer. So, and again, didn't cry over that. That's when Nelson Mandela was released And suddenly we could go to the Olympics. Funny enough, my father had to give up his South African passport, his German passport, to race for South Africa in the Olympics, and never went. He never went, and he gave up his German passport. And to this day, he still can't get his German passport back. So now he's an Australian and South African, but he can't get his German passport. And all the kids and all his grandkids have got German passports.
Sure. Just to, I mean, and your father, I saw that you were with him very recently in the mid-mile. At 87, am I correct?
Yeah, he's 87, and it's the strangest thing. He's a war baby, so you can expect it. So the mid-miles coming up, I'd done a bit of swimming. I'm struggling with my cancer because when I swim hard, my heart rate goes high. So I said, okay, I spoke to the organisers. You'll be the oldest competitor. They won't charge you entry fee, and they'll treat you like a celebrity. It's next week. I think you should do it. I think you should do it. He always says that I told him to do it. Well, it's maybe right, but I said, you just do it. So the next day, he went and swam 1,600 meters, 1 mile, and he managed to do it. And he said, okay, I'm in. So, and he did it with 1 week's training, and then he did 50 minutes, which is quite a good time, and beat people that trained for the whole year. So that's the sort of Chalupsky ethos, is that you go there and just do it, and now he wants to do it faster next year when he's 88. So that's what you do. Again, you just set yourself a goal. You don't plan too much in life. These things happen. I said, hey, let's do it. And I hadn't done much swimming as well, and off I did. And thank goodness I was next to him, because he couldn't swim, and he was swimming like a snake. And I swam next to him breaststroke. That's the speed he goes compared to me. And he swam freestyle, and I kept him straight, and that's why he did quite a good time. But he shows you age is just a number, and he's proving that. He trains 2 or 3 times a day, every day.
Also, being odd, something you mentioned that you haven't been swimming in a while, and you're just back into it. One of the reasons why, as I understood from the book, the golf, you transitioned back in because we were allowed back into the Olympics, and you got the phone call, and you hadn't been in 18 months or so yet.
Yeah, I had done nothing. I've been playing golf. But again, I set my goal to make the Olympic team. And again, it's a contentious point whether I was the captain or whether I was the spokesman. People say, but at the end of the day, most of the people said, oh, no, Oscar's the only guy who's raced mostly internationally, won internationally, and most of the athletes respected me as their sort of leader, and then I had to speak to Nelson Mandela, and I was in all the meetings to see for the athletes and things like that.
Well, you had to give the keynote on 5 minutes preparation. So I said self-appointed, but what I clarity on that was you stepped up as well, which is another thing, again, entrepreneurial. You step up to the plate and you put yourself out there, and then that keynote, you got 5 minutes prep for that?
Yeah, 5 minutes. They told me, okay, I said, listen, guys, they're giving us a lot of stuff. Somebody's got to say thank you to the sponsors and everything, and it's got to be from an athlete. I'm willing to do it. I haven't prepared anything, and Derek Watts came to me and said, okay, you're going to do it. I said, okay, and then off I went, and that's how it all started, and that's how I sort of helped the athletes, and that team was Alana May and Zola Budd, and Wayne Ferreira, Peter Glotz, and then obviously the paddling team. So it was fun. I mean, but the interesting thing, and this is the most important thing I learned from the Olympics, I went there. I don't ever go to participate. I go there to win. Anything I do, I go there to win. And we came absolutely nowhere. You can't make any excuse. We're Norman nowhere. Wasn't a race, it was disgrace. And I said from that day on, in adversity, there's opportunity, because I learned from that there's no way I'm going to get beaten like that again, and that's when I changed my whole training atmosphere and how I trained. I make sure that I went on technique and changed everything. But you learn from adversity, because I came nowhere. Those guys that I beat normally in the ocean, they killed me in the Olympics. And I hated that, to lose, but you got to learn from your losses, and that's what I did. And it's funny enough, I had all these coaches. I had German, Austrian, Swedish, Hungarian, all these coaches. But at the end of the day, you, as the public out there, you know yourself better than anyone. That's where that thing called gut feel, because that's where it all comes from, your gut. And then I think from that day on, I said, no, I'm going to do it my own way. And I did my own way. And as you know, I won my last Molokai at age 49. I mean, that's impossible.
Yeah. Just before we get there, at the Olympics, as well, one of the highlights for you was meeting Madiba.
I mean, Nelson, I mean, again, my whole story about saying, listen, if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be here. And I mean, people didn't realize, and remember those days we had some people flying the old flag and the new flag, and it was pathetic to realize, hey, my whole sporting career, I never went to a junior world championships. I never went to a junior water polo. I would have been in all those sports. And of course, if I was doing paddling for the whole time, I guaranteed I would have got an Olympic medal. But we got let a year and a half before the event. And most of a guy like Clint Robinson, who won the Olympic gold medal in 1992 Barcelona, he had been going to all the junior worlds. So, you just move up the ranks and you know exactly where you are in the sport. We had no clue. And it's the same for every sport. And for us, it's so intense. I mean, you're winning by 100th of a second. It's not like team sports where rugby, you can get away with it. You can play some teams. Your fellow guys can have a little rest while you take the brunt of it. This is a team sport. You win by 1,000th of a second from gold to nowhere. But we were nowhere. But you can't expect it in 1.5 years when other guys have spent 10 or 15 years.
How much do you think that contributed towards your achievements? Not coming in knowing where you stand, versus maybe having had worked for 5 years, knowing exactly what your score
your
was.
Expectation as well.
Do you think that was a contributing factor?
I think it was a great factor, because then I went back and said, no, I'm going to change this whole way of paddling and even the whole way of teaching people.
Yeah.
Because I said, no, this is nonsense. I can get beaten by these people that should never beat me. And I changed everything. And in fact, to this day, I've changed every paddler, although even those Olympic paddlers, how to paddle. I've changed it because I've thought about it so much. So when I'm doing a 40 or 50 kilometer paddle out there, I'm not thinking about myself. I'm thinking about how do I make my stroke better to go faster, and in that make the beginner have more fun. I mean, that's what life's about. It's a mass market, and that's what I learned at the Olympics, that you can't just believe everybody and follow. I'm not a follower. I said, no, I'm going to change everything, and I changed everything. I mean, my gym exercises were completely different to what the Olympic paddlers did. And again, my technique, I changed everything. The people were like saying, shocked, no, that's for Chalupsky. And I said, listen, boys, I beat all the guys at my age. You better start listening. And they are eventually listening. It takes people a long time to change, but it all came from that Olympics, being beaten so badly.
Yeah, and the openness, I think we talk about it as an AQ, where you can adapt and change because of it. I think you said there was a lot of weight training in that Olympics, and you didn't necessarily agree with the way they trained.
No.
Yeah. So, yeah, and also you've sort of pointed out that you learn from the losses, as well as the Olympics you saw as a networking thing. That's what I understood.
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, you met fantastic people. I met Ben Johnson and Boris Becker and Carl Lewis and all these famous people. And then obviously, again, you stick with your team. I mean, funny enough, in that team, Grant Kenny's wife at the time, Lisa Curry, was there. So I knew her from Grant Kenny racing him. So you meet all the swimmers and the water polo players, normally the sports that you know. So I'm not... I look up to people, and that year we had the dream team basketball team as well. And you could go and see any of these people, which was brilliant. So you met these famous people, and funny enough, they've all got 2 arms, 2 legs, and they're just, the difference is their brain and how they perform. And that's life. I mean, I think we can all do it. You just got to get your brain around it.
So we're going to get into campaigns a bit later when we get into, but just touching on a South African race, the Doozy. And you did amazing work in the Doozy. But who was the favorite celebrity? So I had Miss SA, Peggy Sue Kamala, Clive Barker, Dr. Kamala, Baby Jake, and on the other hand, Nas.
Yeah. So and then the Nati Africa also did with her. But I think my favorite one was the boxer, Baby Jake Mtlatla. I mean, he weighed 46 kilograms. He couldn't swim with 2 life jackets on, and he had the faith in me like you can't believe. And that's what you need in life: is if somebody says they're good enough for you, you got to follow them. And he did. In fact, I never forget. I'd already done a river proficiency course to tell him what happens and what to do. And I told him, don't put your feet down, because if you put your feet down, you get foot entrapment. And the strangest thing, we fell out at the big first weir, and the boat turned upside down. And then obviously, like anybody else, you jump out the boat to try and get oxygen because you're underwater. So I'm looking around for Baby Jake. He's nowhere to be seen. I turn the boat up. He's still sitting there waiting for somebody to rescue him with his hat on. Still his hat on. I mean, can you imagine that? I mean, just blind faith that somebody was going to rescue him. He didn't have to even worry about getting oxygen. I couldn't believe it. And then I said, okay, Baby Jake, we're going to empty the canoe out. He says, no, I'm not touching the water. So I carried him 46 kilos, put him on the bank, and off he went. And we did all 3 days, never swimming again. And he brought the crowds down. And that shows you that it takes 1 or 2 people, and that was Martin Dreyer and a guy called Robert Lamberti, make the sport. Remember, I took these celebrities to grow the sport. We grew the sport from probably 200 entries to 2,500. And today, 2025, the doozy just happened last weekend. Out of the 237, because of COVID, has gone down, 80% of those participants were blacks. And it shows you, if you do it right, even the blacks can do it. And out of the top 10, 8 were blacks. Awesome. And understand, this costs boats, paddles, life jackets, all this kind of stuff. And people in water polo and swimming say, oh, no, we can't do it. You've got to have people that are passionate about and helping the other guys, and not stealing the money, and making sure that you actually can change South Africa. And there's a perfect example. And rugby's done it magnificently. Cricket is nowhere near as good as rugby. You don't have to worry about color, creed, or anything. You just go and get the best people. But to make the guys, and that's why I brought those people in. I brought the Dr. Kamalas, the Baby Jakes, the Clive Barkers, because that made the locals realize, these guys can do it. Why can't we? And that's how it started. They realize they can do it. And that's the same thing in water polo. You get the famous guys to come play water polo. And we're going to change the water polo, so you've got a 50-50 black team. They don't like swimming. Everybody says they don't like swimming, but they do the doozy. How can that be? So you see, you can change people's perception no matter who and where they are, and how poor they are. And that was I was very proud of it. I'm proud of it today that we can actually do that, So, and I think water polo and swimming, we've got to realize they can do it as well. And
paddling seemed to have done it quite significantly, because you, in the book you say it was second to running behind the South African government went behind paddling and put it forward.
Yeah, because you had a guy like Pierre Stradum who put his money, put his buses there to say, okay, I'm going to take these kids from Soweto, take them to a dam, teach them how to paddle, and show them the passion. And then once you've got people that love the sport and look up to people, suddenly you've got blacks paddling, which everyone said, no, it's impossible. There's expense, and they don't like water, and they don't like swimming. No, you can change that. If you make it that they're enjoying it, and people see it, and they say, hey, I want to do it. I want to look up to it. So that's what you get to do. I
love this from lessons learned. The more we think we are different, the more we are the same. The best way to discover this self-evident truth is to reach out and make contact with others. What started out as purely a public relations exercise for a kayak marathon ended up not only easing crime problems in the Umgeni Valley, but also generating significant goodwill among the athletes and the people in those valleys that we were racing. We didn't plan that, but by reaching out and making personal contact, it made a magnificent osmosis. Life is like that. If you make an effort to get to know people, in the vast majority of cases, they will reciprocate.
Yeah, Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. And that's what I do the whole world. It's the strangest thing when people drive around with me, and I'm driving like Denmark, and I say, hey, we need a place to stay. I'll phone up my mate and say, hey, I'm in Denmark. But, hey, come and stay. And that's how it works. Because I didn't ask for anything, didn't I? I was there coaching him, and he said, come again. And this happens all over the world. If you give, you get back. Yeah. And me bringing these local heroes, because I understand the doozy's just got all these millions of black people that never saw. They just saw white people intruding on their land. Now I brought these famous celebrities there, which they'd never be able to afford to go because they're the poorest people in Umgeni Valley. And you bring Dr. Kamal, you had thousands of people watching the doozy for a change, not just the white people. And then they realized, hey, Dr. Kamala can do it, I can do it. Because I started with Nas, who was the most famous person on TV. So every rugby player and every person in Pretoria and Bloemfontein who thought they played rugby, they all started doing the doozy. So that brought the whites, a couple of whites. But then bringing these black heroes into the valley grew the sport, and it grew the sport the correct way to show you. If you make the sport look sexy and people want to do it, no matter what color, they'll do it. And they did it.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
So that's how it's a principle we have of think differently or crazy be strong. Same thing about the weight training versus the training you did. You change that up and then just think, okay, what can we do that's not being done and make it happen? Just on the international travel side, I love a bit about China. And the first this is from the book, the first is a Chinese backhand curse. May you live in interesting times. And then the second equally well-known Mandarin proverb, he who rides a tiger is afraid to dismount. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, China was obviously, we were having these problems with AIDS in our thing. We'd bring in AIDS education, but it just didn't work. We were losing good workers and things like that. And suddenly we said, hey, this is not working. I'm getting sick and tired of this. People are striking and we said, no, I'm going to go to China. We went to China and everything looks glittery and glamorous and the workers work hard. Believe you me, they work hard. And if you see even now, they're booming. So you get there and everything's run smoothly and suddenly they just change their minds like that. And now what do? They call your bluff. Say, listen, we're closing the factory down. We'll keep all the moles, and you've got to think ahead of them. I mean, they understand. They just hate saving face, and they came to me and understand I'm a loyal player. They said, "Listen, Oscar, won't you?" They realized that I was sort of the backbone of Epic Hike, so they came to me and said, "Listen, why don't you come with me and we'll do a brand?" And I said, "No way, I don't do that. I'm very loyal." So loyalty is not a big thing in their life. They said, "No, we want to do a new factory." So that caused us a lot of hassles. So that they locked all our molds that we had paid for. They locked all our boats that we had paid for, and we had an inkling about this. So again, you have to think ahead. We started moving some boats to other places in China so we could actually start again. And they shut us down. And again, a Westerner in China trying to fight a legal battle, you've basically got no chance. So we just let that go. And again, that's what you do in life. You just can't chase the bad things that happen in life, move on and see the new opportunities. And that's what we did. So we jumped off that tiger and went to a new place. And then again, you change all the time. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm one of those people. Yes, I started Citadel, which is a big company, and had problems, not really problems, and then suddenly left that, and I just moved from there to another thing. Always moving to better and things, and that's what you've got to do in life. You don't just harp and say and bear grudges. I've got none of that in my life. I mean, I've lost lots of money and made stupid mistakes, like all of us are going to make. But as long as we end up in the right side, that's the most important
And
thing.
any advice for aspiring entrepreneurs looking at China?
Yeah, no, understand. You're just going to know what you're getting into, And again, nowadays, when I was there, it was pretty new, very new. I mean, we were the only white people there, and they used to come and feel your hair because they got no hair, and I couldn't believe at the time I had hair, red hair, and they're like looking at them. When my daughter came with blonde hair, they was like, stop the traffic, So it's very different. So you must read books and you understand their culture, and then a lot of people are doing well in China. So you've got to learn the culture. And again, as I said right in the beginning, you've got to educate yourself. You want to do something, it's like I educate myself about how to fight cancer. I educate myself how to train better than the next person. You educate yourself, because that's something that you can always do till you're 100.
So it's very interesting reading your book and seeing, again, a sportsman that traversed business and sport. What do you think the link is between sport and business?
I think they go hand in hand. The bottom line is that in business, you have to have discipline. And and loyalty, and realize that it's you on this sort of hamster wheel, and you've got to work out a better way of making the hamster wheel work. So you're always looking at different channels. It's like if you're going on a river, which channel is the best? When you're going into business, which way is the best way? And again, you're not going to pick the right way all the time, but the most important thing is that you're changing the different ways and you're finding the new ways. And it happens in the ocean. There's a wave that goes towards the beach, or there's a wave that goes out to sea, or there's a wave going to your direction. You got to pick that wave. But it's not obvious all the time, and it's not obvious in business, it's not obvious in paddling, and so that's why they're very similar. But the one thing that's consistent is if you work, you've got to work hard and smart, not just hard, and you've got to realize there's always a different way. So many people say, oh, this has been done before. You haven't done it like I've done it. So that's the difference. You've got to change up anything, so like this podcast is very different to all the other ones I've done, different lighting, fantastic. That's why I actually wear black, because I saw black worked quite well, so that's the kind of things. You've got to be different so people come and say, oh, this is different, we like this, and the guys are thinking out the box.
Do you, I'm so curious, we've spoken a lot about what you've done, what you've achieved, and I'm curious, like, what's made you this way? What's
that's always the question. What makes Oscar different to anybody else? Well, I can tell you right now that I'm the same as everybody else, except in that 14 years old, I realized that if you do everything at the best of your ability, and you do it all now, and the old Latin saying, carpe diem, seize the day, every day, all day, you're going to achieve.
And when was that? When was that?
That's at 14 years old, and it hasn't stopped. You
Absolutely.
see, now that's the funny thing is that, and that's the hard thing. So many people go off the rail. I saw my friend Richard Channels, who does Zulu Blonde, which is also a unique brand, Zulu Blonde. I've never heard of one, never seen one of those people in my life, but he did this beer. And it's funny, I met him at a funeral, and I said, hey, geez, you're looking a bit porky. I said, this is what you got to do. Do this, this, and this. And he did it. Got thin, lost 40 kilos. And then I saw him 2 nights ago. I said, hey, what have you done to yourself? There he was fatting it. Oh, geez, I'm going to have to go back. You understand? So that is the difference what happens to most people. They've got these waves. They do well and they don't go down, up and down. You want to be consistent. And the way to be consistent is to feed your brain the positive things all the time. And you can listen to podcasts. You can read books. And you've got to keep it going because it's tough to be at the top all the time. I mean, as you know, the book even finished, I think, at age 58, I'm still winning races, international races. How does that work? How do you get why do you want to be so successful? Because I know what success is like, so I want to do it all the time. I wanted to do it in business, I wanted to do it in sport, and in family. I mean, it's a very important thing. I've been married now for 38 years, been together for 42 years, so that's a long time together. But again, they take commitment and it's constant. You see, this is the difference. It's a constant learning and constant reiteration and to make sure that you carry on, because so many people fall off the wagon. And it's much harder to get back on the wagon. So you just got to keep at that level all the time and just feed your brain the right information and the right learning.
That's good. But that's amazing. But I'm curious as to, did you realize that in a moment at 14, or was that a process that you kind of figured out?
It's a good question, because when I won the junior and senior Ironman, it's strange because I was so young, 14. You can imagine winning, you're the top person at 14. When somebody could shake my hand, I wouldn't say anything to them. They shake my hand, I'd say, what are you shaking my hand for? So there's one guy, I never forget, his name is Teddy Bear Patterson. He said, hey, Oscar, when people congratulate you, you must say thank you, you must do this and this. And that's how I learned from 14 years old, just an arbitrary guy. Not my parents or anything. They didn't say, he said, no, listen, hey, Oscar, I'm shaking your hand. You must say thank you and I appreciate your thanks. And that's, I sort of learned it from there. And I also learned it from that day that when you win, people look up to you and it feels good for your own morale. So I think from that day on, I realized winning's better than coming second. And then you work a plan of how to always win at everything you do.
It's interesting. So there was I'm assuming now, and it's a question, you had a lot of you learn through process.
Yes.
Yeah, it wasn't like you didn't wake up one morning and be like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to be this person.
I can't remember that. It's been a long time ago.
Yeah. So I think the thing is that it is a process
It's a process,
you're learning constantly, and that's a mindset. And then from what I'm picking up from what you're saying, it's like you're constantly trying to evolve and make small adjustments here and there to reach a desired state.
100%.
Okay.
And again, this state of evolving never stops.
Exactly.
And a lot of people, they stop it, You've always got to be evolving. Like now I've got fighting cancer, so I've got to do a different thing. All the time, something different.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, love it. The 21-day fast. Can you just ask that quickly? What water you had? But
yeah. So what happens is that so that was 2 years ago in October. They fed me the Red Devil, which most people with breast cancer know, and they gave me that 5 days in a row. They gave me PACE, which is 5 chemo in one thing, and they gave me that every single day, and then nothing was working. I was on death row. My Kappa light chains, which should be around 1 or 2 for most people, it's like smoldering. Mine were at 1,470. They gave no hope. I said, okay, well, let's see. So then I went on a 21-day fast. I always fast, but I went on a 21-day fast where I only had water, black coffee, black tea, and then after about a week and a half, I started having bone broth, because what happens on a long fast is you don't need macronutrients. That's fat, carbs, and protein. You only need micronutrients, which is the potassium, the zinc, and all those small little minerals that you need for your body to run. This is the only thing. And in 21 days, I brought the Kappa light chains down from 1,470 to 111. So no medicines. That was still getting medicines, but that's what brought it down. And then as soon as I went off the fast, my light chains went up, and that's when I went back to Portugal to see if they could find some other medicine to try and keep my bone marrow sort of in check, my Kappa light chains.
I just want to transition to this. I mean, there's just so many awards, but in the book, it seemed an emotional one, and I think it stands out. And then when you did the lessons learned of it as well was, just to tell us how you received that Joe Glickman Award and what it means.
Yeah, so I was on my deathbed. I'd just come out of hospital after having a bone marrow transplant, which basically took 6 months, and then I had the harvesting of my bone marrow. Then I was in hospital for 3 weeks, and I came out there. I could only walk 100 meters, and it was the strangest thing. David Markey said, can you tell me about left feather paddles? Can we have a chat at this time and this time? I said, okay, and I was lying in my bed. I mean, I couldn't move. At home in Camps Bay, and I couldn't move, and I said, what is all this about, So, and suddenly, and then I had a call from Joe Glickman's wife. I'm going to be on that podcast. I thought, what's going on? I had no clue about the award at all. And Joe Glickman, just to give me, who was one of my best friends I'd known all my life, and I coached him through cancer, even though I'd never had it, and he had pancreatic cancer, and I really looked after him, went to see him all the time, and then he died, and this was the Joe Glickman Award. And then suddenly I saw Dean Gardner, who's won the Molokai 9 times. So suddenly I saw all these people, and I said, what's going on? And then when they gave me the award for helping paddling and surf ski paddling in particular, it was very emotional. I mean, I didn't know what to do. I mean, I never expected anything. I mean, again, and that's what life's about. You mustn't expect anything. You must just do it and see what happens. And that was a very proud moment to get an award like that from the people that we and Michelle E. Ray was there, and Jim Hoffman was. It was very emotional because I was obviously down on power and I couldn't even paddle. And now I got that award. Yeah. So again, awards and these accolades are good to see, and that's something that will also build your spirit, and you. That's what life's about: getting these little rewards that keep pushing you to keep going.
Are you able to? I don't know if you're able to read that. I just love this. So he was a writer for the events, and he had a lovely wit about him, and
great wit.
Something. I remember a passage about him warning the gen pop or general public that to stay away from the Chalupskys with their hose pipe. Yeah.
Yes.
But
Yeah, because that was because we ran out of petrol and we made him suck the petrol out of another car to put in our car, and he swallowed half the petrol. That's why that's why that joke came about. But made him do it, not us. Yeah.
are you able to? Because otherwise, I will. But I
Yeah.
just love that. And are you able to see that and read? That's an inscription, I think, on his. To remember.
Remember the feeling as a kid when you got close to the beach and a solid ground of every day turned into soft sand. That's 100%. Your heart would quicken and you would pull your parents' hand like a restrained dog, departure to break free. That's definitely joking. I still feel the pull when I paddle off and leave the land behind, heading out into the island of lightness and no destination of mine. I felt instant peace and a constant challenge. And that's exactly what you are when you're going in the ocean. And that's the kind of writing of Joe Glickman. I mean, he could really make people love the sport who didn't even know what it was about. And I think that's important. And I think that's important to all your listeners is no matter what you do, it's hard to describe how passionate you are about it. And that's important to learn so that people follow you and people want to be with you because you've explained the sport correctly.
Yeah, I love that from this. Just those words were just, I could feel the sun on my face. I felt the sand. Being an ocean lover, he captured that so nicely. I think that's it. Luke, did you have something you wanted to?
No, I think we're good. Yeah, that's great.
And that sort of stuff, I think, gets you through a lot.
Yeah.
So you were diagnosed with cancer just before COVID, and COVID was one of the most difficult times of my life personally, and everyone in the world, I think, and a lot of people had way worse than I did. But so yours from the book is the worst time of your life. That's what you say.
Yeah, I mean, when you get diagnosed with cancer, that was on the 25th of November 2019. The reason why I can remember that because on the 26th of November 2019 was my wife's 60th birthday, and I've organized a surprise party. The only surprise she got that I was going to live 6 months. So, and then we had to go back to South Africa to see the doctors, Chalupsky, and then lockdown happened. And then for us, it was, even though it was fairly tough, I had to be isolated because I was very, very compromised. If I got COVID, I would have died. So that was an interesting time for me. So I was always on the roads by myself, going to have my chemo every week. And again, the old story is in adversity, there's opportunity. So I spent a lot of time on my own, driving around. It was fantastic. And I walked. And funny enough, in the building I was in the middle of Cape Town, they had a parking garage, so I could do at least 10 Ks up and down the parking garage where other people couldn't get out of their house. So you've got to try and make the opportunity happen, you know, and find a way, you know, and that's what I really always am finding. I mean, it's funny, like my son and my daughter are completely different. My son will always see the negative. I only see the positive, no matter what, you know, the situation. It's amazing how I can only see the positive and he can find the negative. I can't even find the negative. I just look at the positive, you know, and that's what life should be about, you know. So, I mean, perfect example, I got cancer and I think, oh, geez, how lucky am I to get cancer? It's a bit unlucky that it wasn't curable, but it's still lucky because I would never have written a book. I would have never been... I've slowly get more famous because so many people are affected by cancer, and I've really been out there telling people I've got cancer. I know how to semi-cure it. I'll help people, and every single day I get a person saying, "This friend's got cancer. Will you do a video for him? Will you speak to him?" And I do that all day, every day now. You know, and the book also helps for people with cancer. Say, no, read my book. I tell you how to fast. I tell you what to do. And it makes you feel positive. And if you're feeling down, that's what you got to do. You got to look at something positive, read something positive, listen to something positive.
And this quote comes out in line with that. You make your own miracles.
Yes, exactly. I mean, as I say, it was funny that Richard Barrow, I don't know if you know, good friend of Dale, Richard Barrow from Barrow's Point of Sale, his son sent me a wedding invitation for February the 22nd. And this was in October when I was on my deathbed. I said, listen, it's going to be a miracle if I can make your wedding. And again, I made my first goal was just to get out of Portugal because I couldn't fly and my platelets were too low. And then I made it, and then I got my Kappa light chains down, and then I went to the wedding. You see, so those little miracles, you can make them yourself, but you have to have a plan. You have to do it.
Perfect. So this is something we do on the show often with guests, and it's just what piece of advice or one word would you give your 16-year-old or 14-year-old self when you won that things? So mine, for example, is I would just, if I could go back in time, I'd be that weird guy that walked up to me and went, meditate, and just gave myself a little bit, or potentially as a joke that buy more Bitcoin. Keep telling myself to do that. But what would you say to your younger self?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I'd say to myself is just stay honest and be real, because I think that's the most important thing. If you're honest, and I started my business career selling PPS where there was no commission, and I built up those 8,000 contacts because I was doing something that got me no commission but helped the person. So if you keep helping the person, they're going to help you. So that's, in short, be honest and be honest with everybody around you.
It's a perfect transition to one of the case studies that I said. I know we're going to get to Chalupsky next, but this is the lesson learned. Don't be scared to do things differently. The way you sold Sanlam was different. So the policies, and versus insurance. So that was thinking differently. And what made you do that?
Yeah, so I worked out, and again, I read a book at the time. I read the book was called How to Master the Art of Selling Anything by Tom Hopkins. And then I listened to his tapes, and I listened to him 1,000 times because you realize, sure, and the things he was saying made sense, and then you bring it into your own words. So that's what I did. And then I realized it's a long game. Life is a long game, unless you've got cancer like mine, is that you've got to set yourself up for the rest of your life. And I realized with PPS, I was getting these clients, and the guys, they knew they were paying at those days like 30 Rand a month. They were all CAs, doctors, and those are the people that I want to be associated with. Those are the people that are going to get wealthier all the time. And some of the CEOs of today, the CEO of the Bud Group is Andy Leith. He was a client. The CEO of the Capital company, first Deutsche Bank, and now what's his Anchor Capital. He was my client and my friend, and this, Kevin Hodgson was More Sports, which was all the what do you call it, outdoor warehouse, sports and warehouse. He owned that. So all these guys were my clients forever because I gave them advice that helped them, didn't help me, it helped them. And it comes back to you all the time. Like as I say, I started my No Retreat, No Surrender fund, didn't do the GoFundMe way, and within 2 weeks, I set it to 1,000 people. Now it's 850 people, and within 2 weeks, I raised 2 million Rand for my treatment. So it just shows you. And the reason why it was so fast is that I've been giving all my life. I've never taken. And again, this came in so quickly. It was amazing. Even the people in the group are like shocked, saying, "Oh, how did that work? I can't believe it." And you got fancy people like Stephen Sard, Sean McCarthy, Gary Player, Pierce Morgan, all these guys are in the fund, And again, all there to help because you help them.
Yeah.
It's so interesting because it ties in directly with a principle and something we talk about in branding, and it's brands. We wish brands were authentically helpful, and this seems to and we go for brands as a butler and sell by helping. So you help first, and then if they need to.
Yeah.
I mean, the example that we use is like this is an example of a podcast. You've done podcasts before. We do podcasts.
Yeah.
I'm not looking to be the next Joe Rogan. I mean, that would be nice. But I don't imagine that's going to happen. We want to produce the next Joe Rogan next that first African sort of Joe Rogan. So sell by helping and brand as a butler. And it seems to have tied in your personal branding. And now what you sent me yesterday was really exciting. I love the logo. I love the shirt. There's the logo. And it just seems like everything went from Epic to Nilo to now Chalupsky. So do you want to take us through that?
Yeah, so what happened is that, I started in 1976 when I had the first ever surf ski that was mass produced was called a Chalupsky. And we just came of the name in those days. This is in 1976. It's not there's no marketing genius there, and I went along, and then I got tired of building these surf skis, which took me 6 months to make. So, and then a guy, Gordon Rowe, made the mass-produced version, and I was tired of making new modifications. So then I moved to a company called Fenn, just paddled their boats, and then I decided with a guy, Greg Bott, to make my own boat, the Epic. And again, completely different. I said, no, I want my boat more stable and all those things, and we did. And then from Epic, which I was there for many years, grew the brand to one of the biggest brands in the world. Moved to Nello in Portugal, and I was there for 10 years. Grew the surf ski brand, also huge. And then with my treatment all happening in South Africa, I decided, okay, and I left Nello, and I thought, okay, it's time that we turn back the clock and let's relaunch Chalupsky surf skis. And I wanted something different, and I went to Navy Creative. I don't know if you know a guy called Dino. He went to Hilton, Dino Perez, and we starting this brand, and it's going to be made in South Africa again, which is coming all the full circle from when I used to make in South Africa. All the rest of the brands are made in Portugal and China. So it's an exciting project. It's something that everybody, and again, this is the funny thing, is that I've built loyalty in the surf ski industry as well. So I know they're all waiting for my boat to arrive because they know what I do is make it good for them. And that's why people buy my product. I don't make it for myself. If I had to make a boat for myself, it would be so narrow, half the people couldn't even sit in them. But I make boats for everybody else to paddle. And that's what this brand's all about. And I want to keep it simple, and I'm very happy what Navy Creative came up with. Just simple Chalupsky, that's it. So And again, I've named all the boats Hawaiian Islands. So Waikiki is a beginner's. That's where all the kids and everybody go and paddle. So it's a beginner's boat. And then Maui is like the next step up, and then Molokai is your ultimate race in the world. So that's why I've kept those three brands, and we'll just grow it slowly. And I know I've already had so much interest in it, and it's going to be fun to do as well, because I enjoy going to compete as long as I can compete, and I'm always there training, so it gives me a goal to go to the races. Otherwise, you just sit at home and think, okay, I'm just going to paddle. But I always like to go to the races. So now I'm representing my own brand, and people can relate to it. And I've always been that person that's trying to help people get better at paddling, and this is another way of doing it.
And you're still competitive. I think you mentioned in the book. I think it was one of your shorts on YouTube. But people still love beating you. So they take it.
They always, every time I beat Oscar. Meantime, I'm half dead, and they claim the victory. I've just beaten Oscar. I mean, the one race I did was amazing, and I just come off chemo. I was in the middle of chemo, and I hate running. And surf ski races, it's in the rules, because I made most of the rules myself, is that the race must finish in the water. So I finished this race, and it was the first time I paddled in the island. I think it was in Tenerife, around the Tenerife. So
Canary Islands.
Canary Islands, yeah. So, and I crossed the line, and I was way ahead. And then I just walked up, because I walked up to the finishing line. This French guy, he was so determined. He dived over the line and beat me, and he actually claimed it. And then everybody booed him, which is I'm very happy about. I mean, that's so stupid. I mean, at the end of the day, he didn't beat me paddling. He was miles behind me. I probably took 2 minutes to walk up the beach, and he just dived over the line as if this was the last thing he's ever done. Beat this guy half dead, And then he said, he had some problems in his life. That's why I said, come on, please, And I saw that famous story where the triathlete lifted, or a runner, the guy collapsed before the line, and the guy was coming second, lifted him up and made him come first, because he said, I wouldn't ever have beaten him because he was so much better than me. And again, that's what you want in life, And it was interesting that even the French team said, that wasn't a good thing
disappointed.
To do. Yeah, very disappointing thing to do.
That's
but
cool,
again,
dude.
you win some and you
lose
some.
I just love it that people, like you say, they still want to beat that name. That's what ties, and we actually, in the bodyboarding fraternity there, I have Mark Stewart. Mark Stewart has done what...
Mark very well.
Yeah. So he's got
his own bodyboarding.
Exactly what you've done, And I love that it's gone full circle, and specifically you said long game, which is massive. We love that. pushed you for a quote, and I know there were so many, and we're going to get to the final ones. But I picked 3 quickly just to go through. So one was a lesson learned.
Yeah.
It's never too late to reinvent yourself.
Yeah, 100%. And it's interesting, and you could never too old to learn from anybody. Understand this, anybody. So I was sitting in the Sea of Kinnereth, the Sea of Galilee. I was sitting paddling, and this woman, a Jewish woman, had been paddling for 2 years. She was like 65, completely not a useless, but I mean, she's not in the same league. I'm Olympic size. She's a beginner paddler. 2 years she'd been paddling. She said, no, I sit on the boat sideways like that. I said, why do you do that? She said, I do this for this reason, this reason. I said, you know what? You're 100% right. Everybody's been doing it wrong for all these years. I'm going to copy that. And from that day, I changed. I learned from somebody that's been paddling for 2 years, but they had all the reasons why I should do it, and I did it. And that's what you're going to do. You can learn from anybody, anywhere, anytime.
Love it.
Sure. Okay. And then something you mentioned at the end of the book, and I listened to the song actually last night to get it right, but May You Stay Forever Young by Bob Dylan.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Age is a number, and if you keep training and looking after your health, you stay young. I mean, my old man's the epitome of that. At 87, he trains 3 times a day. His hearing's gone a little bit. He doesn't even realize he's got an alarm on his watch that goes off, and everybody's like, what's going on with this alarm? He can't hear it, but he won't get a hearing aid, I can tell you that. But again, you can make yourself young. I mean, that's the whole thing, is to stay as young and active and healthy as possible, you know.
And you're just constantly involved. I saw a video where you were critiquing big wave riding on skis, and talking about the angles that they were doing, and critiquing them, and just helping, being, again, authentically helpful. I know in the book, I won't spoil it, we can there's so much in there that we haven't covered, but those you mentioned Grant Twiggy Baker and the 100-foot swells at Nazaré, and Hawaii Chip, who I would love to see those waves. I've spent a bit of time in Hawaii. I haven't been fortunate enough to go to those other spots. But I think the last quote, and it is the book, it's that I just thought, well, I mean, that's the quote. That is you. That's everything I've understood from the reading and watching you and following, and it's been such an awesome experience. But it's no retreat, no surrender.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to ultimately be that. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're not going forward, you're going backwards, and if you're going backwards, you're dying, you know. So that's why people say, oh, how can you fly every week there and fly every week here and fly to Durban for this, fly out here, fly there? I say, no, because if you keep moving, so if you're going forward, so not retreating, you're not surrendering to anything, you know. And I'm not surrendering to the cancer. As I say, my goal is to live long enough so that there's a cure for my cancer, which there isn't at the moment. I'm just hoping AI jumps up to the party and finds a cure for me.
Yeah, we hope so too. I think in closing here, the one question I didn't ask that I generally ask guests is, who's your nomination as an incredible machine?
Well, you know, the funny thing is, I'd say it'd be my wife. She's been around for 41 years. She's sat next to my bed in hospital for 20 days in a row, sitting there, looking after me. I mean, it's hard. You can imagine. It's harder for the cancer carer than it is for the cancer warrior. I go through, obviously it helps a lot if you've got a positive attitude, which I've always had. But she's gone through hell and back. You know, when I was diagnosed, she cried her heart out. But I said, and then I cried for 1 minute, and I said, listen, what I've done in my 56 years, why should I be crying? I've done enough. But she cried like crazy. And funny enough, when the cancer came back just as strong again, and was on my deathbed again, she didn't cry much. She realized, oh, maybe Oscar's going to beat this again. And the third time when I was on my deathbed, she also didn't even, this time she didn't even cry. She cried a lot, a little, and then nothing. So that's going to change a person. But she's also been such a stalwart from, as I say, 42 years together. So she spent her life driving. She always says, I'm not going to go driving, because downwind driving, she has to drive. Somebody has to drive, and she's always driving. So I'm sick and tired of this driving, but she's still doing it.
Yeah, the incredible machine, Claire Chalupsky. Thanks. But it's been an absolute honor, Oscar.
Thank you
thank
very
you so much for your
Thank
time.
you, guys. I mean, it's fun.
Yeah, is there anything else you want to just part? I know we've got, we'll have all the links in the show notes for the.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, I mean, the most important thing when you're fighting cancer is to do your own research. And then I'm on a lot of alternative stuff, fenbendazole, ivermectin, all these things that you're not supposed to take. But I do the Western medicine and my own medicine. And again, you must study. And the biggest and most difficult part of that is who to study, you know. So you've got to find the right people and resonate with them and make sure you do your research that you know it's the right thing, you know. I mean, I've been given so much strange stuff, and like the first thing is when you get diagnosed, no, you just take MCD oil and you're going to be cured. I said, no, well, there's never any research on that, because again, that's money. See, what happens in fighting cancer is that it's the money game. I mean, my cancer was $600,000 a month. Somebody's getting rich. Whether it works or not, they don't care. Somebody's paying $600,000 a month. You can do a lot of money. You can do a lot with that. When you're doing fenbendazole, ivermectin, it costs $100,000 a month. You know, so, and I like Professor Thomas Seyfried. I listen to him because he's a biologist and he can't get any funding for all his research, which is fasting and carnivore diet to cure cancer. He can get no money for research. Dr. Jason Fund, who's a nephrologist talking about intermittent fasting and fasting, can get no funding, because nobody makes money. And if nobody makes money, they couldn't care. They're not really worried about you, sort of worried about you, but just keeping you alive so you can keep paying. So I've got a friend in Australia, his name Phil Paris Brown, and he says, you know, the reason why they nail the coffin is so that people can stop giving you, the doctors can stop giving you chemotherapy, you know. They put a nail in the coffin because that's what happens. To your deathbed, you're just having chemo. And I've had a few people, I said, listen, go and read this and just go and fast. Do a fast. See if it works. If it doesn't, you've got nothing to lose. You're on your deathbed, you know. So, yeah, I think that's the important thing is that you've got to look at alternatives, even though the Western medicine is very expensive. You want to look at alternatives.
Yeah.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you, Oscar.
Thank you, guys. Yeah,
thank
very
you so
nice
much.
To be here.
Yeah, really great to chat.
Yeah. Hope
Cool.
you learned something.
No, we definitely learned.
Absolutely.
Again, guys, this is a book that you have to read. Absolutely have to read or listen to. So, The Incredible Machine, Oscar Chalupsky. Thank you.
Thank you very much.